Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Maisy Mok. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Over 40 people are injured, one seriously, after KMB double-decker ploughs into the back of a truck on Tuen Mun Road. Chief Executive John Lee spends half a day in Yuen Long as he walks around the neighbourhood to solicit views. And badminton stars Chun-man and Ying-suet settle for runners-up at the Hong Kong Open. Over 40 people were injured on Tuen Mun Road this afternoon after a KMB double-decker rammed into the back of a stationary crane truck at high speed. One passenger remains in serious condition, while police are still investigating what exactly happened. Dashcam footage captured the moment the KMB double-decker rear-ended a crane lorry on Tuen Mun Road this afternoon. The bus serving route 58M was heading to Kwai Fong when it ran into trouble near Siu Lam. A crane lorry which had broken down was parked on the road shoulder with hazard lights flashing. The bus driver seemed to be unaware of the situation, however, and drove into the back of the truck. The left side of the lower deck, which had no passenger seats, was punctured by the crane. While the passengers escaped direct impact, many were thrown off their seats by the violent collision and suffered injuries to varying degrees. A triage station was set up by the curbside to treat the 41 wounded passengers aged 19 to 88. This man was considered lucky after escaping with cuts near his eyebrow. As he wiped off blood from his nose, he called the horrific moment he flew out of his seat and the impact destroying his pair of glasses. Senior ambulance officer Tang said one passenger sitting at the end of the lower deck sustained head and neck injuries and was in serious condition. 5 people sustained bone fractures and injuries on their faces, while 37 others reported minor wounds. Traffic Superintendent Lam Chi-yun said police are still investigating what led to the crash and asked witnesses to come forward. He confirmed the lorry had activated hazard warning lights, but did not say why the KMB driver had veered off the lane and into the road shoulder, where the lorry was parked. Both drivers have yet taken breathalyzer tests as they were being treated for injuries. For the second time in 3 days, Chief Executive John Lee conducted a district visit to gather opinions for his upcoming policy address. He visited a subdivided unit, inspected hygiene conditions at a wet market, and sat down for dim sum in Yuen Long, all in one morning. With just weeks to go before delivering his second policy address, Chief Executive John Lee was out and about again to solicit public views. Accompanied by his cabinet officials, the SAR leader's first stop this morning was a subdivided flat in Yuen Long. The 100 square foot unit houses a 4-member family. Lee wrote on social media that the 9-year-old boy could only practice Chinese drums on his bed, while his 17-year-old sister could not afford extracurricular lessons. The chief executive hoped the light public housing scheme he proposed last year could help families like this by providing them with a better living space. But another woman living on the rooftop was put off by the idea of moving twice in a short period of time. First to the light public housing unit, and again after she is assigned a permanent flat. But she was unable to relay her views to the chief executive, who had left for his next stop. Lee was surrounded by shoppers at a wet market on Yuen Long New Street, one of hundreds of so-called hygiene black spots across Hong Kong. Deputy Chief Secretary Chek Wing-hing, the government's point man for the ongoing cleanup campaign, told Lee that the area was once littered with styrofoam boxes. Lee also asked locals about the area's cleanliness before returning to his car. Those who were unable to greet him face-to-face could only shout their demands from afar or wave at him from a distance. Lee wrapped up his Yuen Long tour by having dim sum at a Chinese restaurant, even sharing a table with diners. He also heard views regarding housing, education, and transport matters and pledged to study the opinions with his team. This man who met Lee said there wasn't enough time to express all his opinions. Meeting the press after the tour, Lee said he was encouraged by what he saw this morning, but he promised the government will never stop improving living conditions for the people. About 4,000 railway enthusiasts flocked to the light rail depot in Tuen Mun this morning to celebrate its 35th anniversary. All 5 generations of light rail carriages were put on display for the first time. Arriving 45 minutes ahead of the opening, this fan decided to showcase his collection to celebrate the occasion. Michael Tian, former chairman of the Kowloon Canton Railway Corporation, and his grandchildren were also drawn to the event. Apart from snapping photos with the trains, visitors were also allowed to board the retired Phase 2 carriage and catch a glimpse of the driver's compartment. Thousands of tickets for the open day were snapped up within minutes. The MTR said that it will hold more events to allow the public to learn about the history of light rail, which serves northwestern New Territories. Turning overseas, as the search for thousands of missing people continues in flood-stricken Libya, work is also underway for volunteers to provide emergency aid to survivors. Some are also holding back emotions as they bury bodies in mass graves, while the death toll keeps climbing. Raymond Yuen reports.
Aid is finally arriving at Derna, exactly 1 week after catastrophic floods swept past the coastal city in eastern Libya. Even as the world is prepared to lend a hand, volunteers are struggling to reach the area because most of the infrastructure has been destroyed. Supplies are trickling into the country, but shipments such as these from Saudi Arabia and Iraq got as far as the airport in Benghazi. From there, authorities must figure out a way to send the aid to Derna, some 4 hours away by road transport. Boy Scouts from all over Libya are also lending a hand. One of them is Ahmed, who is responsible for storing relief materials in an organized manner so they can be distributed efficiently. For survivors, nothing is more important than clean drinking water. Authorities are on high alert after at least 150 people suffered diarrhea, likely due to drinking contaminated water. To stem waterborne diseases, Eastern Libya's Health Minister Othman Abdul Jalil has kicked off a vaccination drive. High-risk groups such as exhumation workers, healthcare staff, and children will be given priority.
There is a risk to have a waterborne disease when we have stagnating water, but this risk is not caused by the dead bodies that might be in the streets. There is no risk of contamination from the dead bodies, but you can have other diseases like cholera that can happen, but so far we have no information that such disease or epidemic are taking place in Libya.
With the death toll constantly on the rise, workers are also busy dealing with the bodies, which are piling up. More than 1,000 people have been buried in mass graves so far, according to the United Nations. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
Demonstrations were staged across the world to mark 1 year since the death of Mahsa Amini, the young Iranian student who died of suspicious circumstances following her arrest. Sachin Katvi reports.
Youngsters in the southwestern Iranian city of Arak shouted freedom to mark 1 year since the death of Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian was arrested by morality police last year for not wearing her headscarf properly. Authorities claimed Amini suffered a heart attack whilst in custody, but witnesses said she was beaten up and insulted by officers. The alleged police brutality triggered months of sometimes violent protests. Rallies were also staged in London to mark the solemn occasion. Walking towards Parliament while carrying pictures of Amini, demonstrators asked Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to wake up and cut off diplomatic ties with Iran.
The regime is really brutal, so we all fighting. If it takes 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, doesn't matter, we never stop. We want to see freedom, not to see the mullahs out of Iran. And that's what we say. We want the Iranian embassy to be closed, to shut down, Iranian diplomats to be deported from Europe.
Similar demonstrations were held at Trafalgar Square, where people were demanding justice for those who died in Iran while protesting in the aftermath of Amini's death. More than 500 people were killed in those protests and thousands more detained. Iran carried out 7 executions linked to the unrest. Thousands turned up for a solidarity march in the Italian capital of Rome. Many expressed their discontent with the Iranian leadership.
I'm here to say to the world, to the Italian government, to the European governments, that we are living in these hard situations. The women in Iran are living in this hard situation. They should help us because we are one. It's not Italian, Iranian, European. We are one. It's just one universe.
Amini's father Amjad was temporarily detained by Iranian security forces yesterday. He was later released but was told not to leave his house to participate in remembrance events or visit his daughter's grave. Sachin Katvi, HKIBC.
On to the weather now. It will be sunny tomorrow with a few showers and isolated thunderstorms. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees. Similar weather is expected for the coming week. That's our main news for Sunday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Maisy Mok. Thanks for watching. Good night.